The first time I encountered the Quadro k620 was in a 3D modeling class back in high school, and since then I've largely forgotten about it. For what I was using it got the job done and was mostly stable, but was by no means a remarkable card. However, in my last video where I bought 17 graphics cards for $70, I actually received one of these, and it actually worked. Now, I don't know how much my school paid for these, but nowadays these cards sell for anywhere between $30 to $50 on sites like eBay. Considering these lower prices and excessive supply, you'd think that this card wasn't good for much, but I'm here to put that to the test and ultimately prove it wrong. Before that, there's a few things I want to mention, but if you just want to go straight into the testing, I've got the video split up into chapters so you can skip ahead. NVIDIA's Quadro series is their professional lineup, meant for workstation computers running CAD or CGI type programs. Although they use the same silicone chips as the GeForce series, Quadros use ECC memory as VRAM and are optimized for productivity tasks. This is to enhance floating point precision, which is useful in calculation-intensive programs rather than games that use traditional rendering methods. The first Quadro branded graphics card was released at the turn of the century on January 1st, 2000. It was one of NVIDIA's earliest graphics cards, with their first GPU, the GeForce 256, releasing only 2 months prior in October of 1999. The first Quadro GPU, named simply Quadro, ran a higher memory and core clock than the GeForce 256, but was identical in just about every other way. They had the same amount of pixel shaders, texture mapping units, and render output units, among other things. The card we're looking at today, the k620, was similarly based off the GTX 750 Ti, both of which use the GM107 GPU. This processor was built off the Maxwell architecture and has a total of 1,870 million transistors on the 28nm process. The two cards aren't identical though, with differences in just about every other aspect, such as clock speeds and even PCIe support. But they did both release at the same time, on February 18th, 2014. Back then, the k620 had an MSRP price of $150, while the 750 Ti sold for $140. Not bad for an entry-level card, especially nowadays. But 8 years is a long time, especially for a graphics card, so I decided to clean it up a bit to ensure ideal performance. Taking off the aluminum heatsink was fairly easy and didn't take long at all, with just a few screws holding it all down. Disassembling the rest didn't take so long either, and I reached the die fairly quickly. The thermal paste was, unsurprisingly, rather crusty, so I did end up replacing that and decided to clean out the heatsink as well. While I'm taking it all apart, let's see what's under the hood. Unlike our modern 8GB or even 24GB graphics cards, the Quadro k620 ship with 2 whole gigabytes of DDR3 memory clocked at 900MHz on a 128-bit bus width. Additionally, the base core clock of 1058 MHz was able to boost all the way up to 1124 MHz with a TDP of only 45 watts. It also came with 384 shading units, 24 texture mapping units, and 16 render output units. In terms of I/O, the k620 comes with DVI and DisplayPort, so it's also able to output high enough frame rates to take advantage of high refresh rate monitors. Today I'll be pairing the k620 with a proportionally capable computer. With an i3-4130 and 16GB of RAM, this upgraded Pro Desk from HP should have more than enough power for our needs. I did have to remove the full height bracket since the chassis has a small form factor, but getting the card up and running was as easy as plug and play. The first set of drivers I installed were the most recent professional ones from NVIDIA. I did try browsing around in hopes of finding modded gaming drivers for the k620, and I did find a download for game-ready drivers, but there wasn't any meaningful performance difference. While we're waiting for that to finish installing, consider taking a moment to leave a like or subscribe because you made it this far into the video, which means there's a decent chance you actually enjoy the content. Thanks. The first test we're going to be running today is of Userbenchmark, just to make sure that the system's performing how it should and that the k620 is performing as expected. Okay, so these are the results, with the gaming of a tree trunk evidently. Aside from the tree trunk thing, it seems to be performing on par with how it should. CPU in the 41st percentile, the Quadro in the 58th percentile. The drive for some reason is all the way down in the 3rd percentile, so I should really replace it actually. And the memory's right where it should be, in the 51st percentile. Whoa, for an immediate impression, this is really good. For the graphical settings, I'm currently using DirectX 11 in 720p with just about all the lowest settings applied. You'll notice that the CPU is at 100% utilization and the GPU is only at 70, so there might actually be room for improvement. If I was to get a better processor, something other than the 4130 in this system, we could probably get a higher frame rate even. But still, for a budget computer, this is really good. I bought this computer for like $25 a few weeks ago, and with just a $30 graphics card off eBay, you can actually play GTA 5 really well. The next game I decided to test is CSGO. This card's in 1440p currently, and it costs $30 to $40 on eBay. That is ridiculous that it's running this game so well. You could legitimately use this in a competitive environment. I'm clearly not performing the best in CSGO right now, but I can guarantee that that's not the card's fault. Why is everybody so crap? Jesus Christ, man, you had an AK. Alright, so I dropped the resolution down to 1080p to see how that performs, and it's doing even better. We're over 100 FPS right now. Don't ask how this guy died, I had nothing to do with it, but the next game that I'm in right now is Far Cry 4. I'm currently running the medium preset in 720p, and the game's holding up pretty well. We're using 1.2 gigs of VRAM sitting at 77 degrees Celsius, and it's not struggling too bad at all. Far Cry 4 isn't exactly easy to run either. Back when I had my old GTX 970 build, I couldn't even run the game maxed out and still hit like 50 FPS. Like, it did not run well at all. Granted, the CPU I was using was the 9590, and that probably has something to do with it, but the point is that the Quadro's doing a good job, okay? So I dropped the quality down to the low preset, but I upped the resolution to 1080p, and we're getting even less frames per second. We're sitting at 25 FPS right now, which really is not ideal. I would say the 720p is probably the best resolution for this card, at least in this game. You can see that when we look over here, we're getting like 30 FPS, and then we look at the mayhem over here, and we lose about 2 to 3 to 5 FPS. We are really just maxing out this Quadro right now. Well, even though I failed my mission, it's clear that the Quadro didn't fail at least. So the k620 can easily be used for gaming in Far Cry 4. Now on to the next one. So next up is Crysis Warhead. In the in-game settings, I just selected the optimize feature, and it decided that in 1080p, the Quadro k620 is capable of running the game at the highest setting. Currently, we're hitting 28, 31 FPS at 1.4 gigabytes of VRAM usage, and although the game is holding up and although it is stable, it's not running the best. If I was to play through this game, I would lower the settings to try to get something better than 33 FPS, which I think I'll do now. Wow, already this is going really well. Currently, oh no, this is not going really well. I'm dying and everything just... the Quadro's having some problems currently in Crysis. I'm gonna restart the game and hopefully this will clear things up. Alright, I successfully reloaded the game. We're sitting at 100 FPS right now on the lowest settings in 1080p for Crysis Warhead. We're not even using a full gigabyte of VRAM right now, but our GPU is seeing nearly 100% utilization. Basically 100% utilization. This game looks nice and it's running well, so yeah, I guess the Quadro k620 can run Crysis. I'm kinda surprised about this actually. The k620 is able to run Just Cause 3. I'm in 720p right now with the low settings, and it's playable actually. Granted, we're only getting 24, 25, an average of 30 FPS, which isn't particularly good, but we are flying above the entire map right now, shooting rockets from an airplane. What did you expect? So it seems like the game is playable enough. You're not going to get the highest frame rate or the highest refresh rate, and the game's not going to look the best, and it's only in 720p, but it's still running. Considering how cheap this graphics card is, that's not bad at all. Did I just kill Mario? But with that all destroyed and all these men shooting me, I think this wraps up the benchmark. I'm going to test 1 or 2 more games though. So the next game I decided to run is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and it's clearly not performing the best. We are pulling 43, 45 FPS, but we're in 720p with all the lowest settings and the lowest resolution scale. Everything looks horrible. So I've been running around for a few minutes now in 720p with the lowest settings and a render resolution of 100%, and I think I'm going to try raising the resolution a bit. We currently have an average frame rate of 50 FPS, and we are using 1.8 gigabytes of the 2 gigabytes of VRAM that we have, but if I can get higher than 720p, this game would look a lot nicer and be way more playable. Because you can see enemies without grass, but you can't see enemies if they're too blurry to make out. If there was somebody over there right now, I probably would not be able to see them. Alright, I just turned the resolution up to 1080p, and there's a supply drop right in front of me, so I'm gonna try going for that. There's a car coming. Okay, this is a real-world example of can you game on the k620. Well, guess what, guys? You can't game on the k620, I guess, because what the heck was that? So, how did it perform? I'll let the numbers speak for themselves, pretty well. Every game I threw at it was able to run, playably nonetheless. It's not going to hold up as well in games such as Cyberpunk 2077, but for most mainstream popular multiplayer games, this card should be more than enough. With these results, I'd say that the k620 is actually a legitimately feasible low-end graphics card that could easily be used for gaming. It paired well with the i3-4130 I tested it with, and the k620 was the bottleneck of the system for the most part. But to answer the question, can you game, or rather, should you game on a Quadro k620, I would say maybe. If you have a very tight budget, this graphics card offers great performance for the price, and would be best utilized in an ultra-low budget gaming system. I really do like this card. It stayed cool throughout testing, it never crashed, there wasn't any stuttering, and it could take advantage of higher refresh rates. So would I recommend it? Yeah. The Quadro k620 gets the first ever Jane Dyke seal of approval. Oh, and we also have a community Discord server where we discuss a variety of topics, link in the description. With that, thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. I've left a few donation methods in the description below, and if you want to directly support the channel, that's a great way to do so. If you have any questions or related comments, then leave them below and I'll be sure to respond to it. While you're at it, consider subscribing or leaving a like because it genuinely helps me out. That's about it. Have a great day. Bye.